Kendrick Lamar Duckworth, or as he's better known, Kendrick Lamar, is a rapper from Compton who started to gain some recognition with his debut album Section 80 and then gained pretty much everyone's recognition with his major label debut Good Kid, m.A.A.d City. He is a fantastic artist, but what do I think of his discography? My name is CDTVProductions, and today we are going to be ranking Kendrick Lamar's discography from overly dedicated to Untitled Unmastered, from what I consider to be the best and the worst. At our lowest spot, the number 5 position, I have put Overly Dedicated. Now this one is definitely the least impressive Kendrick Lamar project on this list in my personal opinion. I'm not too sure why, but I just wasn't a huge fan of the whole project. Now that doesn't mean it was necessarily bad, but I found it to be more of an average Kendrick project. However, I did really like the tracks Pussy and Patron 1.5 and Growing Apart with Jhené Aiko, but I guess one of the reasons for me not liking this as much was the fact that the tracks kind of seem unlinked, and Kendrick works best when he's doing a concept album. His rapping, production, and flow is still on point here, but not a lot of the tracks really stood out or seemed that special to me. Which is weird because they just didn't seem as stand out as Kendrick Lamar tracks usually are. I also thought his voice was a bit strange here. It doesn't sound as developed as it would become on his later projects. It had a slightly higher pitch and he didn't have as strong a vocal presence, I feel. I know a lot of you guys might love this project, but for me, I wasn't really a massive fan of it. But past this, guys, I am a massive fan of Kendrick, and the next 4 are albums I all love, so it was kind of hard for me to rank them, but I found a way. At our number 4 spot, we have Untitled Unmastered.
Levitate, 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 Love won't get you out this, drugs won't get you out this.
Now this album might be quite low on my list, but god damn, it was an incredible album for one that was basically comprised of throwaway tracks. This was made up of tracks that didn't make it onto Pimp A Butterfly for a number of different reasons, but every track is still amazing. And one thing I noticed is it's really interesting to see how Kendrick can still bring his own style of rapping to trap style beats. I thought that was really cool, like on the first part of the track Untitled 07, also known as Levitate, or on Untitled 02. Speaking of Untitled 02, it's one of my favourite tracks on here, with verse 3 being one of my favourite Kendrick verses ever. It's just like his monotone flow really works very well there. It just sounds so cold and calculated, and with that like beat with the like skipping hi-hats, it just sounds so nice. And by god, do we need to hear more Kendrick and SZA collaborations. Her voice is fucking godly. There's only a couple tracks on here I could do without, and even then they're still very bearable tracks. Overall, I thought it was crazy how Kendrick can make a compilation album from essentially throwaway tracks and still have it being better than a lot of some rappers' full-length projects. I have almost nothing but praise for it, but it doesn't top what I consider to be his top 3 albums. At number 3, we have Section 80.
Got me breathing with dragons, I'll crack the egg in your basket, you bastard. I'm Marilyn Manson with madness. Now just imagine the magic I like to ask is don't ask for your favorite rapper. He did. Yes, sir. Amen. Church.
Now I hate having to put this album at number 3 because on a list of only 5 albums, that kind of seems like I'm saying it's average because you know it's at the midpoint. But this album is still at least an 8.5 out of 10 for me. I genuinely think this is probably Kendrick's most accessible album for someone that hasn't listened to him before and isn't really ready for his type of sound, because it has very much rap style beats and no tracks that would pass the 6-minute mark, which is something he became a fan of later down the line with certain tracks. But that does not mean he has any less lyrical value on this album. It is yet another concept album, and he touches on so many subjects on this album. One of my favourite tracks here is the track No Makeup, and sure, the concept of women overusing makeup isn't the most unique concept for hip hop, but Kendrick puts a really nice twist on it, rapping from the man's perspective about what he thinks about the women wearing so much makeup, and then in the second verse rapping from the woman's perspective and explaining why she uses the makeup, and it makes for a really interesting listen. And on top of that, it's just a really great sounding track, and it actually probably sounds sounds a lot more commercial than what you're used to hearing on a Kendrick Lamar project. I could list my favorite tracks on the album, but to be honest, every track on this for me is at least above average. Also, if like 90% of the Kendrick fans out there, you're clamoring for a J. Cole Kendrick collab, check out the last song, High Power. Unfortunately, J. Cole doesn't provide a verse on this track, but he did produce it, so I mean, that's close enough for now, right? And to be fair, we also got those Black Friday remixes where, you know, Kendrick rapped over a J. Cole song and J. Cole rapped over a Kendrick song, so I mean, we got close with that. At number 2, the second best album in my opinion by Kendrick Lamar, we have To Pimp a Butterfly.
To Pimp a Butterfly.
At first I did love you, but I just wanna fuck.
Now, this is no doubt one of the deepest, most well thought out and incredible concept albums released to date. It's safe to say most critics agree with that as well, as this album has an unbelievable 96 out of 100 score on Metacritic. Now, Metacritic, you know, it isn't the most reliable system for ranking albums, but I mean, it doesn't take away from the fact that that is incredibly impressive. And I've listened to this album all the way through multiple times, and I am serious when I say I get something new from it every time. Whether it's just figuring out what the poem that the album is based around means, or just figuring out what extended metaphors are used in his songs. If I had to tell you my favourite tracks from the album, they'd probably mostly be the more rap style tracks, such as the opener, Wesley's Theory, These Walls, and Alright. Although by far my favourite on here is Blacker the Berry, which has a really aggressive flow and hard beat and talks about the really like serious topic of racism, and it just sounds fantastic, and you can really hear the anger come through in Kendrick's voice and the raspiness. It's such a great track, and if there's one track I'd recommend for you to check out from this, it would be that track. The only reason why I put this at number 2, which might shock some of you, and not number 1, is for the reason that the music here is not just rap music. In fact, there are only a few songs on here that I'd classify as purely rap, with Kendrick making songs on here based around jazz or spoken word poetry and like pretty much every aspect of black culture. It makes for an incredible and really interesting listen. Really interesting. Like, you won't find anything more varied than this album, but it does make it slightly less listenable sometimes. By that I don't mean it sounds necessarily bad, I just mean you really have to be in the specific mood for this album to fully enjoy it, and that's why this is at number 2. And for our number 1 spot, if you guys haven't seen this coming, I've put Good Kid, M.A.A.d City.
Seem like the whole city go against me. Every time I'm in the street, I hear
Man down, where you from, nigga?
Now, To Pimp a Butterfly may be the number 1 Kendrick project for a lot of you guys, but I had to put Good Kid, M.A.A.d City as my number 1. I love almost every track here, and it's got insanely high replay value, as every time you listen, similar to Pimp a Butterfly, you work out different parts of the story Kendrick is telling about his childhood and what went on around him. This to me is pretty much a 10 out of 10 album, which I actually find kind of funny, because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I hated this album the first 3 times I tried to listen. It was the first Kendrick Lamar project I had listened to, and I just couldn't go through it the first 3 times I tried. I just was not used to his style. I didn't like his voice. I didn't really realize what he was rapping about. I thought he was more of a typical rapper, which I realize now was kind of stupid of me, but I did not like it the first 3 times I tried to listen. But when I eventually listened the whole way, it instantly became a favourite of mine. I was just suddenly hit with everything I'd been missing out on. All the great tracks, the great production, the great rapping, the messages. I was missing out on all of that the first 3 times I tried to listen to it. I have very few complaints for the album, with maybe one of my only ones being some of the longer tracks do drag on a little bit, such as the songs Real or Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, which is technically 2 songs rolled up into one, but it does drag a little bit sometimes. But that doesn't mean they're not fantastic tracks, because they really are, with a really good message. And also on this album, he nails a bunch of different styles on here, from the chill, laid back, commercial, bitch don't kill my vibe, all the way to the hard trap style banger with a story, M.A.A.d City, and the inspirational track Now or Never. It's great to see such a conscious hip hop album get so much recognition and praise, as this album has went platinum and has received much critical acclaim. Honestly, every album Kendrick has released is pretty much gold, but in my eyes, nothing he's done so far beats this project, and I'll be looking out in the future to see if he releases anything that could top it in my eyes. Well guys, this is going to be our discography ranked video for today. Up next, we have a top 10 video on Tuesday coming up on the top 10 most offensive / controversial controversial rap lyrics of all time. And then on next Friday, we have my Worst Rappers in the Game series returning with episode 2 on Migos, where I'll be discussing whether or not they are the worst rappers in the game and ranking them compared to the other ones I've looked at so far. So what did you guys think of this list? Do you agree with it? What would you personally rank them like? And if you're wondering why I didn't include anything before Overly Dedicated, because I know he's got the Kendrick Lamar EP and just multiple projects before that, C4, all those kind of things, it's because I only really had access to the ones I could get through Apple Music, which just started with Overly Dedicated. Yeah, so Overly Dedicated was the oldest Kendrick Lamar album that was on Apple Music, and that's what I used to listen to all my stuff, so that's why that's the furthest back one. I've never heard the Kendrick Lamar EP, and I might listen to it at some time, but these were the 5 projects I've heard from him. All very impressive, but yeah, just comment, let me know your lists. Let me know if there's any discographies you'd like me to rank, any top 10 video requests you have, anything like that. Once again, I know I said this at the end of so many of my videos, but I want to thank you guys for all the support so far because it has been ridiculous. I mean, we are nearing 200 subscribers so fast, and that's in less than 30 days. We've almost gained 200 subscribers, which is ridiculous. I really didn't see my subscriber count growing this fast, and I want to thank everyone that has, from the bottom of my heart. I love all you guys, you're the best, and that's coming from me as Jason, not as CDTVProductions. That's coming from me personally. So I want to thank you guys for all that. With that being said, back into character, this is CDTVProductions, signing out.